and welcome. I'm Brian Caplen, editor of The Banker. I'm here with Stefania Palma, the Asia editor, and we're discussing a story she's written about Chinese fintech companies, which is going in the September issue of The Banker. So, Stefania, Chinese fintech has grown enormously over the last few years. Why is it so large, and how is it different from the fintech that we're seeing in the West?
So the Chinese fintech market is now the largest in the world in terms of alternative online lending. Just to give you an idea, in 2015 it was over $100 billion by transaction volume. If you compare that with the UK in 2015, the UK was only at $4.5 billion.
Okay, so in a way, it's like, in the West, it's still a bit of a fringe activity, isn't it? They're doing alternative new kinds of things, whereas in China, it seems as if they're doing much more mainstream, banking, taking on the traditional giants.
Exactly. Yeah? So they've literally jumped into the financial system and challenged the financial system as a whole, whereas in the UK and the US, you see fintech firms nibbling around the edges of the profit pools of traditional banking services.
All right, now why is it that they've taken that approach, which is very different from what we've seen in the West?
I think the fintech companies in China have also been able to have that approach from a regulatory point of view. The Chinese regulators consciously made the decision in the last decade to let shadow banking thrive and let these fintech firms grow. And that is why you end up having giants like Alibaba or Tencent or Baidu emerge in such a short period of time.
But presumably it's also because the customers didn't think they were getting what they wanted from the traditional banking sector.
Exactly. So the Chinese fintech story, the reason why it's grown so quickly, it's first of all, as I said, regulation, but also, as you mentioned, the fact that there's so much unmet demand for credit. In fact, Chinese banks traditionally have focused on very large corporate customers or state-owned enterprises, whereas retail customers and small and medium enterprises have historically been underserved. So now these fintech firms are jumping in and meeting this credit demand.
So what sort of finance are they providing then? Especially I'm talking about the business sector here.
So they're providing lending. That is the key way that these fintech firms are growing. There's also quite a bit of capital markets activity, actually. So there's a problem in China at the moment. If you want to list in the mainland, firms have to wait for 5 years. There's a 5-year queue, over 700 companies waiting for this. So actually there are these fintech firms like Lufax, for example, which is a peer-to-peer lender, which is actually acting as a bridge, which is completely unheard of in the market, where it sells sort of pre-IPO products to mass affluent customers in China.
All right, so it's pre-IPO, so it gives the borrower equity funding, which then they're going to then replace in the main IPO market when they get to the head of the queue. Is that right?
Exactly. So if you're looking for capital, your company, instead of waiting for 5 years' time, you go straight to Lufax. That puts you straight into contact with investors.
So we talked about the financing that Chinese fintechs are providing their customers, but what about how they're financing themselves? These big companies like Baidu, are we going to see IPOs from the likes of them?
So there are around three big names that the market is waiting for, actually. One of them is Ant Financial, which is Alibaba's financial affiliate. That is probably the biggest IPO we can see coming in the mainland market. Zhong'an, which is an online insurer. It's the first ever online insurer in China. It is also looking to list. But there's also Lufax that is looking to list a peer-to-peer lender. But instead of listing in the mainland, it is looking to list in Hong Kong, potentially to have exposure to international investors.
Okay, because I mean, we said that there's a queue for some of these IPOs actually on the fintech side. So I mean, does this actually apply also to these big giants?
So technically there is this 5-year queue to list in mainland China, and in fact the market is asking itself, will a big name like Ant Financial, for example, be able to skip the queue? And some pundits say actually there is a chance that the government, the regulators, will make a name this big skip the queue just because it wants to cement
And they want to do that
fintech.
for prestige reasons, because these are really internationally attractive IPOs.
Exactly, and it will help the regulators fulfill their main objective from the start, really, which is to create these big fintech companies in China in the quickest way possible.
Stefania, it sounds very exciting. We look forward to reading about it in September.
Thank you.